Is it possible that a team as historic as Ferrari has unintentionally sabotaged its own season with Lewis Hamilton? How did he go from being a star signing to a symbol of frustration and technical errors? Stay, because today we reveal the harsh truth that has come to light after the Brazilian GP. The 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix will be remembered in the recent history of Formula One as the event that abruptly and uncontrollably blew up the facade of stability that Ferrari had tried to build with the arrival of Lewis Hamilton. What should have been a triumphant stage, a kind of joint resurrection between a legend of the grid and the most iconic team in motorsport, ended up becoming a public demonstration of organizational, technical, and emotional collapse. At Interlagos, not only was a race lost, Ferrari's mirage of competitiveness was broken, and an uncomfortable truth was exposed. The team is not living up to its ambitions, and Hamilton is paying the highest price for it. From the return of formation, the atmosphere was already dense. Tension was perceived in every movement, in every strategic decision. Ferrari, which came under pressure due to the poor accumulated results, needed an impeccable performance to avoid losing ground in the Constructors' Championship. But the day began with a multiple accident in the first corner. Charles Leclerc was the collateral victim of a collision between Oscar Piastri and Kimi Antonelli, which left him out of the race in seconds. That incident, although serious, seemed like a typical racing mistake, until the real catastrophe arrived. Lewis Hamilton, for his part, starred in one of the most unfortunate episodes of his long career. In a matter of moments, he suffered two impacts. One with Carlos Sainz when competing in Turn 1 and another with Franco Colapinto just meters later. The SF25 was severely damaged, especially to its front wing and flat bottom. The team confirmed that the car lost between 35 and 40 points of aerodynamic load, a colossal figure in terms of performance, which transformed the car into an unstable and unpredictable artifact. Even so, Hamilton remained on the track for 37 laps, fighting with a vehicle that no longer responded, that resisted every corner, that threatened to take him off the track with every acceleration. Finally, Ferrari decided to withdraw it. It was inevitable. There was nothing more to squeeze out. The damage was not only technical, it was also symbolic. The double retirement condemned the team to fall from second to fourth position in the Constructors' Championship, leaving it 36 points behind Mercedes and just 4 behind Red Bull. But more importantly, it left a deep emotional wound. Hamilton, getting out of the car, did not hide his frustration. He declared that he was living a nightmare, a devastating phrase for a driver who arrived in Maranello with the hope of writing a glorious last chapter in his career. The most painful thing for Ferrari was not only the abandonment in Brazil, but the accumulation of evidence that the project is not working. In the entire 2025 season, Hamilton has not managed to get on the podium even once. His best result was 4th place. Meanwhile, Leclerc has achieved 7 podiums, accumulating almost 70 more points than the Briton. The contrast is brutal. But beyond the numbers, what became clear in Brazil is that the problem is not with the drivers. It's in the car. It's in the organization. It's in the decision-making. The Interlagos disaster was the spark that lit a bomb that had been preparing for months. Ferrari didn't just lose a race. He lost control of his narrative, the trust of his star, and perhaps the opportunity to compete for more than just survival. At that moment, the red dream began to turn gray. To understand why Ferrari's 2025 season is collapsing in this dramatic way, we must stop looking exclusively at the performance of its drivers and look closely at the true origin of the crisis: the car. The SF25 has not only failed to be competitive, it has failed in its most basic conception. It is a single-seater born from a technical philosophy that prioritized theoretical performance over operational consistency, manageability, and flexibility of adaptation. In other words, Ferrari didn't build a winning tool. He built a trap for his own pilots. The most controversial decision, however, came from the technical direction. Loic Serra, the new head of development, opted for a change of approach that turned out to be lethal for performance. He decided to temporarily freeze the car's aerodynamic evolution to focus on redesigning the rear suspension. Their argument was that a better dynamic platform would allow the existing aerodynamics to work properly. But what happened was that Ferrari was left without significant updates for 3 months, while its rivals McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull introduced constant improvements, improving tense every weekend. This technical paralysis has had direct consequences on the track. While McLaren gains between 3 and 5 positions in the standings thanks to its ability to adapt the car in real time, Ferrari remains stagnant. Hamilton has been left out of the top 10 on multiple occasions, despite being just 3 tenths off the lead. But those 3 tenths in today's Formula One make the difference between fighting for a podium or being stuck in traffic for the entire race. All this has transformed the SF25 into a car that requires a perfect context to perform. But Formula One never offers perfect contexts. There are changes in temperature, wind, rain, traffic and classification, unexpected degradation. And in all these scenarios, the Ferrari 2025 not only does not adapt, but it collapses. What was supposed to be the car that would take Hamilton back to the top ended up being his anchor. The British pilot's frustration is completely understandable. He arrived in Maranello trusting in a serious project, in cutting-edge engineering. But instead, he found himself with a car that demands he be perfect every second of the weekend, and still doesn't guarantee results. There is no magic possible when the tool fails by design. And in that sense, Ferrari has failed its star driver, and what is worse, it has failed its own history. It is easy from the outside to point out a driver for poor results. On paper, Hamilton is far from his teammate. He has not stepped on the podium even once in 21 Grands Prix with Ferrari. Leclerc, in contrast, has achieved 7 podiums in 2025. But reducing this contrast to a question of individual performance would be not only simplistic, but unfair. Because the data does not explain what happens on the track when the car does not respond. They don't explain what it feels like to drive a car that loses grip without warning, that doesn't accept balance changes, that doesn't respond the same from one session to the next. And that is exactly what Hamilton has experienced. But the most painful thing is that, since Maranello, some have already begun to question whether it was right to bet on him. There are sectors within the team that see the points difference with Leclerc and cast doubts. They ignore the differences in strategies, the errors in the pits, the compromised configurations, the accumulated damage from accidents that he did not cause. The disappointing Hamilton narrative is beginning to gain strength in some Italian media. But the truth is much deeper. Hamilton is not failing. It is being sacrificed. You are paying the price for having believed in a project that was not ready. You are investing your time, your image, and your legacy in an unresponsive machine. And he does it without breaking with the team, without blaming in public, knowing that his experience is the only thing that keeps the hope of a reconstruction alive. Because beyond the immediate results, there is something that neither the points table nor race analysis can capture. The character of a driver who does not give up. A driver who, even in his most difficult season, continues to deliver every lap as if he were fighting for a championship, even if you know it's not. And this is where the story becomes deeply human. Because this is not just a story of engines, strategies, and technical errors. It is the story of a man who chose a difficult path knowing that he could fail. That left the comfort of a team like Mercedes to embrace the chaos of Ferrari. Not for money, not for marketing, but by legacy, by history, for the supreme challenge. And perhaps, in that sense, what we are seeing is not a failure. It's a sacrifice. One that, if it ever bears fruit, will be remembered as the foundation of a resurgence. But if not, it will be one of the hardest and most honest lessons that modern Formula One has ever taught. After a crash as resounding as the one suffered by Ferrari in the 2025 Brazilian GP, the inevitable question is, what now? What's next for a team that promised to fight for titles and now struggles to stay afloat? What can a driver like Lewis Hamilton, who has won everything, but who today finds himself trapped in a cycle of technical frustration and unfulfilled promises, do? And perhaps most importantly, are we seeing a temporary crisis, or the beginning of a structural fracture that could take years to repair? The challenge that Ferrari faces is not only technical. It's not just solved by new parts, aerodynamic updates, or a better weekend setup. The real problem is one of identity. Right now, Ferrari doesn't know who it wants to be. On the one hand, it is trying to become a top team again with ambitious decisions, such as signing Hamilton. But on the other hand, it continues to operate with errors that distance it from the level required to compete against McLaren, Red Bull, or even Mercedes. The disconnect between what Ferrari wants to represent and what it is actually building is the root of its collapse. And until it is resolved, no pilot, no matter how talented he may be, will be able to change course. Lewis Hamilton understands it. And that is perhaps the most painful part. Because when a champion arrives at a new team, he does so with the hope of making a difference. But at Ferrari, even a 7-time champion seems limited by a system that does not allow him to be himself. It is not about lack of work or commitment or experience. Hamilton has done everything a driver can do: adapt, push the team, accept mistakes, guide development. But the car doesn't respond. And without a proper tool, even the largest ones appear vulnerable. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.